Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show following a bit of an interesting game against the Washington Capitals. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that game at this moment, but that's the beauty of these post-game shows, is we can kind of talk through our feelings, see how we feel about this. I know some people in the chat seem to be okay with what happened here tonight. Alistair Clark says, glad they got the point. It was a close fought battle. Phyllis says, hey, everyone just popping over from IC. Thanks for coming over. And anyone here who hadn't been checking out the IC show, make sure you always go check them out before you come and you see us. But yeah, they get the 1 out of 2 points against the Caps. It's okay. Would rather have gotten the win, of course, but it is what it is. So I think there's going to be a lot of people in the chat who are okay with what we saw here tonight. I'm kind of, again, I don't know how I feel. You know what helps me, though, understand how I feel these things, is talking to my main man, Kenny Wiebe. And that's just an excuse to play his entry music, which, as we know, is the best in the business. Let's get him in here, everyone. Here comes Kenny. The one thing no one in the chat room gets to see when we play that song is Kenny plays a mean air guitar to it every single time. It looks great. Kenny, great to see you, my friend. Again, it feels like it isn't like it's been so long, and it has been, but it's nice. We're going to start getting into the routine of things here. By the end of this, I think we're going to be a little bit busy by all this time is done. And I think both of you and I are saying, bring it on. We've had enough time laying off. This Christmas break has gone on far too long for my liking. I'm sure it has for yours as well. But great to see you, Ken. Give me your first thoughts on that game, because it was an interesting one.
Yeah, for sure, Sean. Great to be with you. Great to see you, and great selection of T-shirt, by the way. You totally surprised me with that, and I didn't even notice when we did our little microphone test. So
there we
go.
Go.
Good job by you there for sure.
It's a beauty.
That's nicely done. In terms of the game, it is interesting. I mean, I think you could make the argument on both sides of the coin. I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois saying outright that it feels like a point lost in some ways. Yes, they were able to rally. But, I mean, Dave Lowry didn't agree. He felt like it was a point gained against a team that's, one of the better teams in the East. We know they're one of the better home teams in the East, generally speaking. Now, we also understand, we always talk about urgency, Sean. The Capitals had one win in their last 6 games, right? But they had points in 3 of 6. So the Jets now have points in 5 of 6. So if we're looking at the bigger picture, starting with a point in a series in a road trip that is opening up one of the busiest and toughest stretches for the Winnipeg Jets, I would counter with the entire season. James, I'm happy to tell you the answer. I don't have a Sean's Headband T-shirt.
We'll get you one. We'll get you one.
Yeah,
we're going to start an internet meme. Look at someone, or find someone that looks at you the way Sean Reynolds looks at Ken Wiebe, because I just adore you, buddy. And this is the proof of it.
This is what James really knows is that this is Sean's rebuttal for him thinking that I threw him under the bus in the Kevin Bieksa episode.
I wouldn't be sucking up to you. I'd be wearing this with like an X through it or something like that. No, it's a good shirt.
It is a great shirt, and we do have, that's a great tease by you. We've got some other great news, but we're not quite ready to be in the sharing stages. But we know that Kenny and Renny fans are going to be absolutely thrilled with the news. In terms of the game itself, super interesting. Jets had, you asked about it. It was an incredible start for a team that had been off for another almost an entire week, 6-day break again. They're up 2-0, 2:20 into the hockey game. But again, so interesting. Another one of those games where the Jets had opportunities to get it to 3-0. A couple bad breaks, couple posts. I mean, the Scheifele chance, he's tied up and he makes an incredible play to get the redirection. It goes off both posts. and doesn't go in. And next thing you know, the Jets kind of get caught in an interesting no man's land type of scenario, and Alex Ovechkin makes it a 2-1 game. In a game where the Jets had, a really good start, and that kind of, it took some of the momentum away. The Jets did have posts. They had 2 for sure, Tracy Okranik, but Kuznetsov also had a shot off the post. So it's not like it was just a tilted game. The Capitals showed some really good pushback after that. But at the same time, Sean, after the Jets went down 3-2, that looked like it could have been a really deflating goal, but they find a way to get even and get the game to extra time. Now, that's a huge goal for Dubois. Great job by Pionk to set up the one-timer. But for Adam Lowry had 1 assist in his last 11 games. I'm sure there were folks at home saying, oh, why is Lowry out there? Well, he's out there to be a net front presence. And what does he do? He gets the puck over to Dubois for the tying goal. So that's a big extra attacker goal. Anytime you rally against a playoff team to get it into overtime, I would say it's an important point. But at the same time, given the scenario where the Jets are at right now, Sean, they're looking up at some teams.
Yeah.
They got to, if you can get a 2-goal lead, you want to try to steer that thing home. So interesting on a lot of levels. I know, I'll turn it over to you before we get to the overtime goal here. But overall, I would say the Jets played pretty well in this game. But at the same time, I think they're probably on the plane thinking, at least some of the players are thinking that that's a game that they had to have if they want to get themselves over the playoff line instead of, hovering around the playoff line is what I would say.
Yeah, you know what? I said it before you hopped on. I still don't know how I feel about this game. Maybe right. I'll have kind of like formulated exactly how I feel by the time we talk this through over the hour. But my early gut instinct is I don't have a problem with this. I think they come out and they get that hot start, which is exactly what you're hoping for. And not easy to do for a team that hasn't been playing hockey, that's only been practicing. One side will say, hey, they've had all this rest. Of course, they're going to be able to come out. But I think that only works if you prepare for it the right way. And I think what we've seen in the last game they played against Detroit, this game against the Capitals, Dave Lowry did a bang-up job of preparing this team to come out the right way. Now, he'll give the credit to the leadership group, which he has, throughout the week. And Pierre-Luc Dubois, I thought was interesting. I asked him about that hot start, and I was wondering if he'd say much about Dave Lowry. And he kind of put it with the players, too, just about how much they love playing hockey and how happy they were to be back. But, they have a chance in that game because of the first 2 minutes of that game. Now, I'm not saying they didn't play poorly or that they played poorly after that. I think they played really well, but I think what we saw is what you can expect from a team that hasn't been playing a lot. You get into a 60-minute game. I know they had 60-minute practices where they pushed, but a game pace is different. So they got the hot start, but I think that you can fully expect what we saw from them is little patches of the game where they get a little bit dozy and go to sleep and make some mistakes. We know that the Capitals are a team that kind of capitalizes on that. This, to me, is all built into the kind of game you can expect from the Jets. They'll work this stuff out as they go on, as they get back into game pace, and then they're going to get into Kenny having to worry more about exhaustion rather than having too much energy, but trying to get back up to game speed. But the fact that they kept things close, the fact that they didn't let it get out of hand, I think of the Carl Hagelin breakaway and Connor Hellebuyck coming up at the right time and making that save, keeping that game close, giving themselves a shot, and then going at the end and tying it up, getting that point. To me, this is a point-earned game. This could have been the kind of game where you saw the Capitals get ahead of it, and you think, geez, we haven't been back. It's our first one back. It's going to take some time to get our game legs back underneath us. This, to me, is definitely a point earned. I'm okay with how this goes because I think it will bode well for them in the coming games throughout the rest of this week.
Yeah, agreed. And what I would say, Sean, too, the Jets, did they let up a bit? Wraparound goal. That's not really a bad play. It was, I think that Hellebuyck kind of overcommitted, but in a lot of ways, the Caps player kind of still, the reason why he overcommitted is because he hit the right pad of Hellebuyck, right? So he didn't really have a chance. At first, I thought maybe it wasn't a great reset, but when I went back and looked at it, Hellebuyck was not going to be able to come back into the net because of the contact that was made. And then it's just bad luck that it goes off of Schmidt's skate and then hits the one off Hellebuyck.
Right.
And the other one is the point shot by Orlov surely goes off Pagansky's stick and I think it also hits someone else on the way in. So I don't think it was goalie interference. I know some people are looking at it. I mean, how can it be interference? I mean, his right leg is outside of the crease when the contact is made. And I would even say, I mean, we've talked about it a lot, Sean, about Dubois, how there's been accidental contact. I think that Hellebuck actually initiates the contact on that play, don't you?
Yeah, agreed.
So,
Yeah,
I
entirely
don't
agree
see
with
it as goalie interference at all. I mean, yes, there was contact, but I think that it was because Hellebuck initiated the contact in some ways. It's just a bad luck goal. But I agree with you. I mean, the fact that they came back and got a point out of the deal, I would say that's the Jets played well. And I don't think that the Jets really even sat back. What I would say, I know a lot of people going nuts on social media. I think that the communication was not there on the Ovechkin goal. It was a really nice play on the give and go element, but I think that what people don't like, in slow motion, everything looks bad, of course. But I think what happened, Logan Stanley gets caught in no man's land because he's not sure that Nate Schmidt is going to get back in time. And by the time Schmidt gets back to kind of attack the puck carrier, yes, he does lose Alex Ovechkin on that scenario, but I think he thinks he needs to be in between both, and then all of a sudden Schmidt is in the frame, but then it's a little bit too late to get over. But having said that, I don't think that Logan Stanley had a particularly strong game. I think that there were some moments where, I mean, again, he's also coming back from COVID. We don't know how severe his symptoms were. I mean, I thought there was a couple times his reads were a little bit off. Yes, he made a nice stretch pass on the first goal, but he got beat one-on-one by Nick Dowd on one of those plays along the boards. But and his ice time was higher. He was back on the penalty kill, which is regularly regular scenario for him. Dylan Samberg I thought was steady. He didn't stand out as much to me as maybe in the debut, but he didn't play as much. So I thought Samberg was steady. Stanley's going to need to elevate his game, Sean. I mean, this is one thing that stood out for us in the conversations with Dave Lowry so far. He said it doesn't matter what your status is on the team. If you play better, you're going to play. So to me, that means Logan Stanley, he can't spend time worrying about looking over his shoulder, but what he needs to do is elevate his game, because there are other players in that battle for ice time and competition that are elevating their game right now. So to me, I mean, again, not every game is a referendum on whether a guy's ready or whether he needs 20 minutes, but Stanley needs to elevate his game. That's accurate. And there are other guys who are trying to elevate their games and have done so.
You touched on a whole bunch of things there. One of the things I wanted to talk about, and we're going to get to a bunch of all that, but one of the things that I think is really interesting about that, and let's talk about Stanley. You talked about Samberg. Let's bring in Heinola into this. Let's bring in Perfetti, Pagansky, all the guys who've been playing here and what they've been doing. Reichel, we can bring all of these guys into it. Dave Lowry talked to us, and you touched on it, about his idea of if you show that you capitalize on your opportunities, you're going to get some playing time here. Dave Lowry's theory, or not theory, his strategy on this, it's going to get put to the test. And it's going to get put to the test, it looks like, by Cole Perfetti, because Cole Perfetti, I thought, looked phenomenal on that second line. He seems to have found a way now that, 3 games into this, 3 games, I think, Ken, 3 or 4. I think it's just that was his 3rd game tonight with that line.
Yeah, his 5th game overall.
I mean, it feels like forever because they've been practicing, together on the ice for such a long time. They seem to be like a unit that we're entirely used to. But they know where each other are on the ice at all times now, it looks like to me. And it's just, I'm so impressed by it. He gets his first NHL goal. Congratulations to Cole Perfetti on that. Absolutely phenomenal. But this is going to get into that territory. If they keep playing the way they play on a night where Kyle Connor gets a goal, Cole Perfetti gets a goal, Pierre-Luc Dubois gets a goal, and all those guys get a bunch of chances where they're finding each other. This is going to be in one of those situations where when Blake Wheeler comes back and when Paul Stastny comes back, and if they do get, depending on what's going to happen with Nick Ehlers and how long he's out, he's out at least 1 game. We'll get into that as well. But if the Jets do get to a place where everyone's healthy, there's going to have to be some decisions made. And Dave Lowry's strategy of, making sure that the guys who earn ice time keep that ice time is going to be put to the test, because there will be pressure from veterans potentially for Cole Perfetti to be moved off that line And right now, the way that they're playing, he probably shouldn't be moved off that line. That was the best line tonight. It was the most active line. They were the most dangerous line. They had a ton of chances. They all scored on this night. You know, they're all feeling it with each other. That's a line that you can't be pulling apart.
Well, I mean, Cole Perfetti, first kudos to him for his ability to adapt on the fly. This is something that we've seen at every single level he's played at. We saw it last year. It took him some time to find his feet under him, and then he really elevated. The fact that it only took him 4 or 5 games to adapt to the NHL level, and to be honest, it's just this 3-game block, right? I mean, early in the year, that's nerves, and it's your first NHL game and all that stuff, and then by the second game, he was already bumped to the 4th line, so I mean, the fact that he spent the majority of these last 3 games, or at least part of it, the 2 games for sure, in the top 6 is important, Sean. But what I would quickly remind you is that you were saying the exact same things about Yevgeny Svechnikov, but he did get bumped off the line. So what I would say is that Perfetti has done an excellent job in carving out extra ice time and a role for himself. I think it's important. He can stay there. But what I would like to also remind folks, on a night where Dubois played 21 minutes, Cole Perfetti took 13 shifts for 13:04. So, yes, he's done an excellent job at 5-on-5 with those guys, but I would counter that I don't think that Cole Perfetti is ready for 20 minutes a night, which is what a top 6 player would play. Now, a lot of the disparity in ice time is because of the power play and the fact that that top unit, had scored early and then took a couple of 2-minute shifts. So that would make up for some of the ice time, because Perfetti has, I think, like 5 seconds of power play time. So that's part of it. But I do think it's important that he stays there initially, for sure. And now, again, let's get into Ehlers right away. And Ehlers being out for multiple games would suggest that allows you to keep Perfetti there at least out of the gate and let him continue to see if he can continue to do what he's been doing. I mean, I think he's done an excellent job. I'm not ready to say he's ready for 20 minutes at the NHL level yet, because those are hard minutes on a 20-year-old who is undersized in a lot of ways. But the way he processes information, Sean, we talk about this almost every single time. His ability, he's finding guys in tight. He's getting open in tight. And the thing that you touched on, and I mean, we saw it in the way that Pierre-Luc Dubois spoke about him. His ability to not over-pursue. If you're an NHLer, you're playing in your 5th NHL game, you're on a 2-on-1, it is so easy to go too far ahead of yourself and get into a position where Dubois can't even find you for that pass. He showed incredible patience, A, to open up for the shot, B, to not over-pursue or get too tight to the crease. And then, too, like the pure joy from Perfetti in how he explained everything. I blacked out. I don't know where I even scored. Classic, like when he said going to the bench and basically looking at Dubois and saying, "Oh my God, I just scored my first NHL goal." Like that's just incredible stuff right there, Sean. But in terms of what he's been able to do, he has not been a liability defensively. He's doing a nice job in terms of board battles. And Sean, I think one of the more impressive things is he's doing it basically playing out of position. Like the position he would be least comfortable with probably is right wing. But because of his ability to think the game, he hasn't looked out of place on the right side at all. So, incredible job by Perfetti. And it's important for him to continue to play well. I think he's done an excellent job. And he's going to continue to play as well as possible. But what he does is he stretches out the lineup. No matter where you put him, he stretches out your lineup. Now, it's a lot easier for Stastny or Wheeler to come back into the lineup because Ehlers is going to be out initially. But it's important to keep these guys going. And when there is chemistry, like you said, I would say do leave them together. I think, if you're bringing back guys, like put Lowry with Stastny and Wheeler, or put Lowry with Svechnikov and Stastny or Wheeler, whatever way you want to do it. You can stretch out the depth on your lines by keeping Perfetti in the top 6 for now. And again, Perfetti is going to show us over the length of time whether or not he's ready to stay in that position, right? So I give him credit for what he's been able to do. I think that Perfetti will continue to get better because of all the things that we talk about. But I just think that it's like same thing I said about Svechnikov. It's early in the process to just be saying stick with that line for the rest of the year. Though I do contend, and I agree with you, Sean, they are showing some remarkable chemistry. And man, that line could have had 4 or 5 tonight quite easily, given the looks they were able to generate.
Well, clearly it depends on what happens going forward. But I did want to say this in comparison to the other guys. So you talked about Sandberg. Sandberg, I thought, looked phenomenal in his debut. And yeah, he looked good tonight. Clearly had a lot less time. But the one thing, and I've remembered this time and time again, because I remember when I was first in the game, like a young fan, and I always think of Lonnie Bahanis. Remember Lonnie Bahanis?
Of course, yeah.
Of course,
He
you
had a
remember
great.
Lonnie
He
Bahanis.
played for the Moose. He's a Winnipeg guy.
Yeah,
And he went on this great run with the Leafs, but
with the
the
Toronto
run
Maple
lasted
Leafs.
about. He had a great Hockey Night in Canada game, but that stretch lasted like fewer than 10 games, did it not?
Exactly. But it was an amazing run. And
Of
I
course,
remember
yes.
I remember being, one, because like I'm a proud Manitoban. So every time,
Yeah.
a Manitoba boy comes up, you're rooting for him, you're pulling for him, give him a chance, right? I remember just being so sold on Lonnie Bahanis. Who was he on the line with? Was it Thomas and Sundin? Is that who he was on the line
Honestly, I
with?
don't remember, but I think it would make
I
a lot of
believe
sense given
I believe
the
that's what it
scenario.
was. And he just took off and he was phenomenal. And I remember it being like, geez, this guy did this. How can he do this? And then, I got and started talking to some players and they're like, listen, everyone, every prospect can look good coming in for one game with their eyes this wide open, all the energy they've had. You can focus on one game and throw everything you have at it and look really good. But now you got to do it again 2 nights later and 3 nights after that. And you got to do it in practice, in the days in between. And you got to keep going and going and going. The thing that makes pros, and especially the best pros, is consistency, right? So that's what we need to see. So, I had a whole bunch of people tell me, and there's some people in the chat room, and I'm not saying that he's not there. We'll see what he does more and more often. But Sandberg looked good in his first NHL game and got his first NHL point. You can't just take a look at that game and say, boom, he's proved it in that amount of ice time. He's an NHL player. He's ready to go, right? So we saw him not take a step backwards tonight, but I don't think I agree with you. He wasn't as eye-popping. Pagansky, he goes out, he does that really nice drive to the net. But other than that, I thought, some of the younger players didn't show as well tonight. I thought the bottom six was definitely a little MIA on the night here tonight. But the one thing that I've seen, the whole point of this is to get to Cole Perfetti. When I watch Cole Perfetti, he's a guy I think that, he's a cerebral player and he seems to be figuring out the game more and more and more and getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, again, to make my point, this is just 3 games, right? What happens after 17 games? What happens after 25 games, 40 games? We have to see that, right? So I'm not saying you cannot take him off that line because he had a couple good games here. But if he keeps progressing the way he's going and continues playing how he's playing and everyone gets back and that line is still playing like that, I think if you're Dave Lowry, you've put out there how you feel and how you are going to handle young players with opportunity. If this continues like it is, I don't think you can take Cole Perfetti off that line because then you're going back to the message that you and I both talked about when this coaching change was made. And we thought job one for Dave Lowry was to show people that the players that are going and the players that are playing their best are going to be rewarded. And right now, if what we saw here tonight from that line continues going forward, never mind if it builds, which is very possible for that to happen, I don't think you can bust that up without sending the message that certain players are not going to be touched on this lineup. They're going to get their opportunities regardless, and your opportunity will exist only when they aren't there to take that opportunity. And like Dave Lowry had said, it sounds like he's trying to root that out. And I think the Cole Perfetti for me, if they continue doing what they're doing, is really the canary in the coal mine when it comes to that approach.
Right. So the big thing for Cole Perfetti, which also applied when the same thing happened with Yevgeny Svechnikov, right? He wasn't producing a ton of offense, right? He was fitting in very well on that line, but he was at 4 or 5 points. So Cole Perfetti, in his first 4 NHL games, had 0 points. So what we always talk about, you have to produce in the top 6 if you want to stay there. What did Cole Perfetti do today? He produced offense, which is what he needs to do in order to continue to get that kind of an opportunity and audition. Right now, Sean, Cole Perfetti is making the Winnipeg Jets a better hockey team. So he deserves to be playing in a role where he can succeed in. Sometimes that's going to mean playing in the top six. I think as we move on and progress, it's going to mean he's going to get time on the power play, which will be deserving of. But again, I know that the chat room is going to go wild here, which is totally fine. I'm here for it. In Blake Wheeler's last 5 games, Sean, before getting injured, 1 goal and 10 points. So it's not like a scenario before where you're saying, oh, you can't put Wheeler back in the top 6. He's not producing. Well, hang on a second here. Just because he has been out of action since December 10th, let's not forget the 5-game block leading into him getting injured. So
right.
The other thing that can happen now with Ehlers going out, you can conceivably, I guess it could mean you could see Wheeler and Scheifele immediately reunited. I think you could also see a scenario at some point down the road where Cole Perfetti and Mark Scheifele are playing together as well. Right? Right now, these guys are clicking and meshing and doing all kinds of things very well. So I see more opportunity coming for Cole Perfetti, but in a 1-goal game, I have no problem if the Jets are protecting a 1-goal lead. Do you think Cole Perfetti is ready to go out against Nathan McKinnon's line?
No.
Okay, so this is what I'm saying. I mean, I'm happy to hand him a bigger role and more responsibility, but you're not just handing over the keys and saying, hey, man, it's no problem if you make some mistakes. Like, the Jets are in a scenario where every single point is valuable to them. Right now, Cole Perfetti is helping the Jets accumulate points by playing to his strengths and to his identity. But there's still going to be a learning process as we move along here.
Great point. Here, I just want to make a point here before I get this.
Yep.
BA Split says Perfetti's a first-round draft pick who played well at every level. He's no Lonnie Bahanas. BA Split, how did you possibly get from my comments that I'm trying to equate Lonnie Bahanas to Cole Perfetti? I don't give these things out, but I have to, and I'm wearing the perfect shirt for this tonight. You need to wake up after that. I don't know where you got that from, or open up your ears and listen to what's being said. You missed that one. You're not even in the parking lot of the ballpark that we're playing in right now. Figure it out. Hey, let's get there. I just wanted to make this comment. I've made this is one take that I have that I don't hear from a lot of people. I've been saying this for years. I'm so confident in my take on this, but we saw it tonight. How many times have I said, if the Jets are leading, the last thing you want to do is sit back against the Jets and let them move the puck? I was sitting watching tonight. They sent out Alexander Ovechkin. There was about 2 minutes left. That line was out. The puck went deep on the Jets. They had it. They put it in deep, and they went back and they sat back at the red line. And I thought, well, that's the worst thing you can do if you're the Washington Capitals. Sure enough, they come down. They allow the Jets to gain entry, go into the zone, pass the puck around, and I get why they did it, Ken. I think they felt like they'd figured out the Jets' power play by the end of the game, and they were just allowing the Jets to kind of pass the puck around on the perimeter. That's something we should talk about because they did get that first goal.
Sure.
But after that, it seemed to get back to that. It looks great. They keep possession forever, but they never seem to get the puck to the net kind of thing. So I understood why they did it. I also understand the idea that this is how we, the Washington Capitals, defend leads. We're not going to change. We're going to do our thing. But boy, oh boy, if you are, to me, that's a pre-scouting failure. Like, the Jets get a point out of that game because the peoples whose job it is to pre-scout the Winnipeg Jets missed the fact that if you're playing the Winnipeg Jets, you're better off trying to press them in their own zone and keep Connor Hellebuck in the net than give them the entire length of the ice to load up, get down the ice, and start applying pressure. Because when they get going like that, they're as good as in the league as it gets when it comes to pushing to tie that game up.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's interesting. The Jets found a lot of easy ice through the middle through some smart plays early on. I think that there was some pushback on that front by the Washington Capitals. Sean, you brought up Bahanas, but Craig Zamzo brought up Frankie Bialowas, like two of the great Manitobans to suit up for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and a proud Winkler Flyer, Frank Bialowas, and Mark Auld. There is not a chance in hell I would ever consider fighting Frank Bialowas. He's probably the toughest guy to ever play in the MJHL. I was scared. I once skated with him at a summer skate with the Winkler Flyers when I was a prospect before I started playing with them. I was scared to get in his way. There's no doubt about that. I would never fight that guy. He would have dusted me. There's no doubt about it. In terms of the Jets, let's get into Scheifele here.
Yeah.
We've been talking about him a lot. Why don't you start and then I'll go, because I think there's a lot of poorer takes in the chat room so far, and
Well,
we'll go into that at first.
I'll start with this. Gary Croft, I starred this comment. He said this way earlier on. Hopefully he's still with us, but said 55 was covering the puck carrier going around the net. He's supposed to leave him. You and I may have differing opinions on this, Ken.
Yeah.
So I think it's his job at that point when he sees the man being beat. It's his job to kind of try and seal off that post. So I do think he's going to the right place. But at the same time, it's a play that has to be made with recognition that your man is still the man behind you, and that the man who got beat by Kuznetsov is trapped behind the net. So you now have to defend that in a way where you're trying to make sure that you're allowing Connor Hellebuyck to seal that post. You're going to keep that guy from skating right straight in front of the net, but you're also going to try and angle yourself in between Kuznetsov and Wilson so that a pass cannot be made. So Scheifele chooses to go and try and seal off the post. I don't think it's the right play. And did I bring up this? Yeah, I brought that up with Gary Croft. So to me, he goes a little too far sealing off the post. But the egregious sin in all of this is when the puck is moved, he just keeps skating. Like if he just stops on that post, then he's right where Wilson shoots the puck and picks up his own rebound. Like the most terrible part of that play is that Wilson doesn't get the puck and bury it in the back of the net. It's stopped.
It's the second chance.
He scores on the second effort, and he scores on the second effort in the spot where Mark Scheifele had been and continues skating out of that area there. So I get it. You know what? If you're Dave Lowry, who are you putting on the ice? You're going to put players on the ice that you think can go get you the extra point. Believe me, the Winnipeg Jets aren't worried about the Washington Capitals loading up points. They don't care about what happens in the playoffs with the Washington Capitals unless they meet them in the Stanley Cup final. So they don't care about that. They're going out there to try and win points. That's how it goes. So you get a player out there who you think is going to be able to potentially win the game for you on offense. But clearly Mark Scheifele did not I don't think there's anyone out there who's going to defend that and say he played that the way a play should have been played. I think first off, he gets too eager going after it. But second, the egregious error there for me in all of this is that he skates through the danger zone and allows it wide open for a big body like Tom Wilson. It wasn't the right play.
Yeah, but what I would say, I mean, I would also think too, I think there's plenty of blame to go around, and it's not even necessarily blame. Like Kuznetsov is an elite player. He makes an elite one-on-one move to go around. I mean, was his plan to go around the net? Probably not. But I mean, the Caps had some success with those wraparound kind of plays, so maybe we have to credit them for the pre-scout in some ways also. Honestly, too, I think that it isn't another example. We've seen this on a couple of occasions where Mark Scheifele is in a position similar to the Jake Evans situation last year. I think if he doesn't get suspended for that play, he might have made a stronger play towards Kuznetsov to cut him off at the. I do.
You do?
I just think that there's a little bit of tentative is not the right word, but there.
Even if he does, though, Ken, it's the wrong play. Like if he tries to blow him up on the side of the post, he's leaving. If I'm that guy and I'm driving, coming out from behind the net, and I see a guy's trying to take my head off, I'm just throwing it softly into the slot and letting someone skate into it.
I'm not saying he takes his head off. I'm saying that he can close off the passing lane by attacking him directly. But what happens on the play is, because the rebound comes out from a sharp angle again, and then the over pursuit means that Wilson is there all by himself. So I think you could probably toss it. There's a portion of the blame to be distributed maybe equally by all three players, but Scheifele's the last guy in the frame, so everyone's all over him, and that's okay. So I don't think that any one of those guys played the play particularly well, but it was also a really smart play. But even if Scheifele's there, is he going to win the stick battle with Tom Wilson, who's at 6'4" and 235 pounds? I mean, that doesn't take him off the hook for over pursuit. But overall, I mean, this is just what have we seen in overtime, Sean? This year, the Jets usually are taking the play to their opponent in overtime, right? This is one of the times where the Caps took it to them right out of the gate, and the Jets had no answer. It was in the back of the net 26 seconds in. But what I would like to counter with Scheifele, even though I agree with you, I don't think he played that, made the play particularly well. Scheifele was one of the more dangerous players in the game tonight. 6 shots on goal, 9 attempts. I thought that that line was doing a lot of things well. Andrew Kopp had a bunch of chances. Ehlers, before he got hurt, I think there were some times where, to me, I don't know what you thought, Sean, and I'm going to ask you flat out. I thought that Ehlers played well. He did a nice job of drawing penalties. But to me, it looked like a guy who was still dealing with the effects of fatigue from COVID. I don't think that Ehlers had the same explosiveness in the game before he got hurt. I think that I saw a lot of effort and I saw a lot of nice plays, but I didn't see the takeaway speed blowing by their opponent that I'm used to seeing from Ehlers, and I suspect it has something to do with COVID.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know. I think, to me, what the problem with that line is, they look disconnected right now. That what we saw from Stastny and that line, I thought was like Stastny, whatever he does with that line, I think he makes them cohesive and he brings them together. He's kind of like the bridge between Scheifele and Ehlers. What I see when I look at that line now with Andrew Kopp, and believe me, it's dangerous either way, because when you've got Mark Scheifele, if Mark Scheifele can work with Ehlers, they're going to be dangerous. And we've seen that when Mark Scheifele works with Andrew Kopp, that it's dangerous. And we saw, how dangerous Andrew Kopp was in the last game against the Detroit Red Wings. So there's something there, but I do feel like when it's not working for Nick Ehlers, he's fast, but he's on a bit of an island. His speed takes him away from his line rather than working with his line. And
Scheifele can keep up to him, though. I mean, Scheifele's a powerful skater.
I'm not saying he can't keep up with them. I'm saying that it's that whole idea with Nick Ehlers that when you've got speed, a lot of times, and it happens a lot in junior hockey, when you've got speed, a lot of times you chase open ice, right? Because if you get it to open ice, you get free and you can make your next move and you can decide to cut and dash somewhere. But the problem at the NHL level is open ice, and the ice that really good defenders give you is not a dangerous place, right? And so when we get back to the idea that Paul Maurice talked about a lot last year, and Nick Ehlers talked about last year, is he was starting to use his speed not to get to away from the play, but to get into the play. To me, I'll agree with you on this part. Like, it seemed like he was taking himself away from the play, not moving in with the rest of his line mates. And so I don't know if that has something to do with that line, those three players needing to get a little bit of chemistry going and a little bit of consistency, or to your point, if it's a COVID thing and he's just trying to figure his way back in here. But the one thing I will say is that line definitely, clearly was the second best line for the Winnipeg Jets tonight. They didn't come anywhere close to touching Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois and Cole Perfetti.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There was a stretch where the Dubois line, I thought, got a little bit quiet in the middle of the game, but overall, I thought both those lines were pretty solid overall, for sure. But I mean, if Ehlers is not with Scheifele, and if Perfetti's with Dubois, well, then where is Ehlers? Would be my counter to you, right? I mean,
I'm not saying to move him around. I'm just saying that's
okay.
that's my thoughts on why I didn't see it working tonight. Yeah.
Okay, and I mean, too, the other thing too. I mean, so is Andrew Kopp? I think that what people are missing on that line, Andrew Kopp is the security. We're talking about defensive miscues. Like, Andrew Kopp is the security blanket. So.
Yeah.
I mean, are the Jets better off having Andrew Kopp as a security blanket on that first or second line? Or do they go back to where it looked when Dave Lowry took over, where it's Kopp and Lowry together on the checking line? Because as you mentioned, the checking line wasn't quite as noticeable for the Jets tonight either, with the exception of one or two shifts when Jansen Harkins and Austin Pagansky got the puck to the net. So I think there's some big questions ahead for Dave Lowry where it comes to how he plays his lines, and how do you find the best balance. And
I'm fascinated to see where they're going to go. Aren't you?
Is Svechnikov on the fourth line, or is he on the third line, or is he on the second line? I mean, he has the ability to move up and down the lineup, but where's he going to be? And I mean, this is another great scenario. So, like, when Scheifele and Wheeler came back into the lineup, they put him with Adam Lowry. I mean, could that happen again? I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see it. Would you? Sorry, but I mean, it would be Stastny. It would be Stastny and Wheeler in this case.
I mean, I would be shocked because it seemed to work so terribly. Do you know what I mean? Like, the first time around, and I don't know. I
That
would
line was
think,
pretty good. Those three guys together.
but no, I mean, like, if we're going back to when they put Wheeler with Scheifele and Lowry, are you
Yeah,
saying those guys were really good?
they were. Their analytics were excellent. They had the puck all the
Okay,
time.
but I mean, I don't think that the
It didn't
well,
lead to a lot of production, but I mean, they didn't have to defend. They didn't give up any goals, and they did. They certainly spent the majority of time in the offensive zone.
I don't think
Sorry, I don't
two
mean
guys
putting them
$14
together.
million
No, sorry.
between two of them to not score any goals.
Sorry, fair. What I'm saying is they created plenty of offense in a small sample. So I'm just saying that you have Wheeler and Stastny coming off, COVID and injury. I mean, I guess now it gets complicated because Ehlers is out and you need a guy to jump in the top six. But I think one of them's got to play alongside Adam Lowry on that third line.
I'll be honest, the way I've been thinking about it, and especially when you've got, Cole Perfetti in the mix now, and you're talking about a guy like Evgeny Svechnikov, I think there's enough that you can push Adam Lowry if you want to down to the fourth line, and if you wanted to try and create, that battering ram style of play that it seems like they've wanted to get back to at times, that you could make three scoring lines, and then choose to throw your hammer out against the lines that you want to throughout the game. It seems to open things wide up for that. I mean, could we make like a Svechnikov, Wheeler, Stastny line? Stastny's whenever he gets
natural
put in at center, he does well, right? So if Stastny ends up being the third line and the top lines kind of stay as they are when people come back together, with Svechnikov kind of feeding in there is enough guys to make three scoring lines. To be honest, that's where my mind is going. And I just think, Ken, I know what you're saying about the analytics, and I know that argument was there, and it was just a matter of time before those guys get scoring. You know who I think got impatient with not scoring on that line? Never mind the analytics. I think it was Wheeler and Scheifele themselves that got a little bit frustrated, and clearly their old coach did, because he split those two players up and then put each of them on a different one of the first and second lines and tore up some lines that were working in order to try and do that. So I know what you're saying, and I know the analytics may have said that, but I don't think the coach at the time, and maybe that doesn't matter, but I don't think Paul Maurice at the time was happy with how that line was going, and I don't think Scheifele or Wheeler were happy with how that line was going. So that's what I think is kind of the thing about that I don't see Wheeler coming back and being like, great, throw me alongside Adam Lowry, let's pick up where we left off analytically. I just don't see him being interested in that. I see him wanting to return with players that he feels like he works with, which means he's probably going to want to be on a line with either Kyle Connor or Mark Scheifele, or potentially even both of them if we're getting back to that old kind of idea. I do think we've heard enough from Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele, and maybe even Kyle Connor, that when they put them together, boy, those guys sure love playing with each other. And they've said in the past they're their favorite guys to play with. When Patrick Laine got put up on that line, and it was Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, and Patrick Laine, and they had great numbers. As soon as Blake Wheeler moved down to the second line center, as soon as he was released from those duties, he went straight back to that line. And Mark Scheifele said, these are my favorite guys to play with, right? So we know that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't. It's a long way of me saying I don't see that happening. It could.
Sorry, I just meant in the short term,
yeah.
And I didn't mean to say Scheifele. I was just using it as a parallel. Just with Stastny and Wheeler both coming back, I could see them getting eased into it with Lowry. But I mean, that's probably not happening now because Ehlers is out, multiple games. And for those who missed it, Dave Lowry mentioned, what was your take on the hit? I mean, it looked like it was, we understand that in slow motion, it looks terrible. I mean, I thought in real time it was a penalty. Lowry seemed to suggest he thought it was, he could have been a 5-minute major. I mean, there was no penalty called whatsoever. And now obviously Ehlers, if Ehlers is out for any length of time, I mean, if it's multiple weeks, I mean, that's a big blow for the Jets, no matter what we're talking about in terms of guys being able to come back, whether it's this week or next week.
So when I was watching the play in real time, I missed it. I saw him down. I didn't see the knee, and I remembered thinking, well, that if it's a knee, it's a subtle knee. And then you see the slow motion. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't subtle at all. But what was subtle about it is Orlov Orlov knees him, and usually you know what it's like, Ken. When you play a game, when you knee a guy or someone knees a guy, that guilt posture takes over. It's just your brain. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. He didn't have that. He carried through that and turned around and never looked at the ref to see if anyone was watching. Orlov handled that like a veteran who was like, "What, me? I never did anything," right? So I actually really like the way Dave Lowry handled that. And here's why. He said, one, I had the benefit of instant replay. So he excused the refs from missing that. But what he did say by hammering home that point of, I had the benefit of seeing it on instant replay. Well, you know who's going to have the benefit of watching that on instant replay is the player safety department. And that's the message I think he was trying to get out. Yeah, this cost them tonight, but he's sending it out there that what we saw on instant replay is not okay. And so the guys whose job it is to look at this need to look at this. You've got everything you need there to make a decision. I think that's his way of putting pressure on the league, trying to make sure that Dmitry Orlov gets a suspension out of this.
Well, and the Jets also have experience with a kneeing suspension to Neil Pionk for that play on Rasmus Sandin, right? So I think that there's probably some thought thinking, well, if that was 2 games for Neil Pionk on Rasmus Sandin, then Orlov probably deserves to be spending a little bit of time on the sidelines for sure. So, but I agree with you. And I think the other thing, you're right. I mean, Orlov doesn't throw his hands or knees kind of in the air. He drove right through him, right? Which kind of almost makes it a dirtier play in some ways, don't you think?
Oh yeah, no, it's a dirty play. Everything about that play is dirty. There was his Orlov's reaction to it, the subtlety of it. Even when you saw him on the bench, right? Like when you saw they kept training the camera on him while the refs were meeting and talking about it, he just looked like he didn't have a care in the world, right? He didn't look like that guy, the Sylvester and the Tweety cartoons with the feathers coming out of his mouth. He didn't look guilty at all. He looked like he was just like, when are they going to drop the puck? When are we moving on to the next play? I thought it was pretty subtle. Hey, Ken, it was asked for, and I love listening to this music. We're going to run out of time.
Let's go.
Let's get the Sean's headband on and make this a late breaking Kenny and Renny
Never
version
too late.
with Sean's headband. Speaking of this, Ken, the people bringing this up, Liquor Beaver says Jets have no one who intimidates the other team from taking liberties with their top talent. Did you feel like you needed to see a response from the Jets after that play?
No, they're chasing the game by a goal. There
you go.
I just don't think that that's a situation where that's a take a number situation. I mean, people know who Dmitry Orlov is, right? So, I just don't think that, and again, what are you going to do about it? Like, Orlov's not going to fight. He's not a fighter either. So, I understand the mentality, and of course the Jets don't want people taking liberties. I just think that was taking liberties. I would even argue it's not even really taking liberties, because it's not a situation where a player went out and said, I'm going to hurt that player, or I'm going to go intimidate that player. Just something that happened, and it happens fast in real time. I don't think that Orlov necessarily meant to do it, but he had already committed to the hit, and then he quite clearly drove through the knee. So it's a dirty play. It was missed, and we'll see if it leads to a suspension. I personally think that if Neil Pionk's play on Sandin is a suspension, I think this has got to be at least a game for Orlov and potentially 2.
I'd be blown away if it wasn't a suspension, and I think 2 games as well. I think it starts at 2 games. Ken, let's get into this because people want to talk about it. It's basically the news of the hockey world. Hot Lunch is asking us to take on the pissy incident here. Let me start off by saying, put the cards on the table. Jimmy Matheson, Maddie, as you and I know him, is a good friend of the both of ours. You've worked with him a lot longer, but I've got all the respect in the world for Maddie.
Same here. Yes.
And so we come from a place, and just want to get that out there right off the bat. Everything that we talk about here is going to be colored by the fact that we know this guy. I called,
and
Maddie
he's a Winnipegger. He's a Winnipegger.
Yeah,
he's
a Winnipeg boy. He's Cactus Jack Matheson's son. And he's also a guy who spent the 80s in the Oilers dynasty dressing room. Like, if you want, if Maddie's in a room and Mark Messier or Paul Coffey or Wayne Gretzky comes walking into that room, they'll give a head nod and say, "Hey, Maddie, how's it going?" I mean, this is a guy who's got a ton of respect from a 40-year career, and he's earned it.
And we saw it at the Heritage Classic in Winnipeg when those Oilers stars were in town.
Yes, exactly. So just a quick thing, because some people have missed this. John Chan says he missed this. So Leon Draisaitl was asked a question. Just basically, he was asked to name one thing about, that the Oilers, if they had to name one thing they need to do more of or change to kind of turn around that awful putrid streak that they're on right now, what would it be? And he kind of gave a generic everything answer. So I'm going to give my take on the whole thing. It's your job as a journalist to get an answer, right? And if a journalist is doing his job properly, he's representing his customers. Your customers in this case are, the consumers of your product. Like you all are here listening to us right now. That's the fans. In sports media, it's the fans. So I need to be going out and asking questions that I think the fans want answers to, right? And I'm not doing the fans, the consumers of my work, any favors if I ask a question and they don't answer it and I just walk away from it, right? So what Maddie, I take away from that, is doing in that situation is that he's pressing and trying to get more. He's trying to get an answer to light something up so that he can educate the audience, or have Leon Draisaitl educate the audience. Leon Draisaitl clearly didn't want to ask the question. Maddie pushed. Leon's response to Maddie pushing was to make some kind of comment. Ken, help me on this, but he basically said something along the lines of, you have all the answers, right? So He calls him a know-it-all. So this is the one thing about this that I've seen a lot of discussion happening online about this, and a lot of people calling out Maddie and saying that Maddie did something out of nowhere. Leon Draisaitl fires the first arrow in this battle here. Leon Draisaitl takes a shot, and so this is my take on it. There's a lot of people out there, a lot of hockey fans will look at this and say it's disrespectful for him to go after him or anything like that. And I just say this, my take on that is, if you're a fan, you are connected to your players, right? So if I'm a Winnipeg Jets, let's say I have a conversation with Pierre-Luc Dubois and we get into it a little bit. I'm going to tell you right now, for the most part, you as a Jets fan are going to look at me and you're going to think I'm an a-hole, right? Because you adore Pierre-Luc Dubois, because Pierre-Luc Dubois brings you happiness. Pierre-Luc Dubois does stuff. You watch him. So you just right off the bat are going to be conditioned to, more often than not, take Pierre-Luc Dubois' side than you are to take mine. That's the life of a journalist. We get it. I'm okay with it. That's how it goes. Those guys do something that's special. They get paid a lot of money for it, and they earn that, okay? So I'm okay with that. But you're also taking a look at a situation here where Maddie is a guy who's been doing this for 4 years. He's had a ton of relationships. Maddie's a man. These are two men who are getting into a conflict, and Leon Draisaitl fires the first, let's go with the first arrow. So Maddie saying the pissy thing, would I have used that terminology? I wouldn't have used that terminology, but Maddie did. And I'm not going to question, he's in that relationship, but you are seeing two grown men going at each other. And that's what happened in that situation. So I take a look at that, and I think this is Maddie pushing, trying to represent his readers, trying to get answers. It's a player who didn't want to give those answers and takes a shot, rather than just saying, resting on, I'm not going to answer the question. He says, I'm not going to answer the question. And by the way, here's a shot your way. And this is a grown man who's been doing this for a long time with a lot of legendary Hall of Fame players who's pushing back. Okay. Again, I wouldn't have used that terminology, but that's Maddie. That's his thing. I think he's okay with having used that terminology and lived with it. I see this as two guys, two grown men going at it. We'll see how they work it out, but I don't have a crazy amount of beef with this. This is an interaction, again, between two grown men in the workplace. These things happen, Ken. And I think they happen a little bit more often because of this whole internet Zoom kind of thing. Is this could have been two guys getting at it in a locker with no cameras around, which is probably how the majority of these things happen, Ken, in the normal world. But you're not going to interact with a player now without a camera being there, and so it got caught on camera. I think these things probably happen more often than people think. It just gets out in the open because of the way things are going. What's your take?
Yeah, and in terms of some context here, I know a lot of people who cover the Oilers, and the one thing we know about Leon Draisaitl is that he's not an overly engaging individual. He's an incredibly talented hockey player. When it comes to dealing with the media, he doesn't enjoy it. It's not his thing. So some people would say, well, if it's not his thing, then no big deal. But what I would say is that there's a little bit of a confrontational attitude with Draisaitl and some other media members in the past. So I think that people who are just seeing this as a snippet and a one-off, I think they're missing the context. I don't think that Jim Matheson is overreacting if this happens one single time in a history.
Exactly.
Leon's been there for 8 years. So this isn't new behavior. And to be quite frank, if you're an alternate captain, like Leon Draisaitl is, part of your job is to have answers for a question like the first one that was given. So, again, I'm not a confrontational person by nature. I have no problem whatsoever with Jim standing up for himself. I think that in a lot of times players just expect the media to back off or, kind of defer to them. And Jim was like, no, I don't have to put up with your BS, so I'm not going to. I think that, initially it probably started as, I think he wanted a better answer, and when he found out he wasn't going to get one, then too, I think that how I would also describe it is he asked a question that probably a lot of people in that market have been wondering on a lot of other occasions, and he had the stones to say it out loud. Mm-hmm. And the other part of that too, could both people have handled it better? Sure. But to me, the fact that I don't think the question was poor at all. The thing here is very simple. I get it that the Oilers are frustrated. They should be frustrated. But it's not the media's fault that the Oilers have put together one of the worst stretches in the NHL. It's not the media's fault. The players are the ones out on the ice. And hey, Leon Draisaitl is doing his part. He's a great offensive talent. He's put up a lot of points. He does a lot of great things. But part of leadership is taking your team through turbulent times. If you don't want to go into an expansive answer, no problem. But it's fine if you don't want to bury your teammates. No one's asking you in the media to do that. Jim Matheson was not saying rip the goalies by asking the question that he asked. So to me, I just think it should have been handled better. And again, if you don't want to blame your teammates, what do a lot of leaders do? They put the blame on themselves. So, right? So again, I'm not saying that Leon Draisaitl should stand on his sword, but he could have given a better answer. And I think that then there's no confrontation whatsoever. And like I said, I'm with you. I have no problem with Jim standing up for himself. And I also, in some ways, if Leon wants to stand his ground, that's his right. But it's him that looks. I do too. To me, he looks bad in that scenario. So, but I also
listen. Go finish your point because I want to say something in closing.
No, and I also like that when they were trying to move on, I like that Jim asked another question. I'm not done with you yet. I have another question for you.
Yeah,
and then he kind of gave another smart ass answer.
Yeah, and see, so for me, this is the thing: is like I don't overly mind that Leon Draisaitl responded the way he did. Like with me in this, these are interactions.
Hang on, one second. When's the last time you saw Sidney Crosby act that way towards a reporter?
Well, for sure, and I've said this before. I've said this before. There's certain guys in the game who conduct themselves in that manner, and I'll tell you this. I talked to Matty about this, and he brought up the names of all those Oilers legends and said, I've never had any of the, here's guys who are some of the best hockey players who ever played the game, and we never ran into that. Now, some of that is going to be a new generation of players. Some of that is going to be, media is clearly, what we've seen since the 80s is hockey players have gone and started making money up out of the stratosphere, and the journalism game is actually going in the other direction, right? So the power imbalance is just absolutely massive, right? So we get that. But I don't, I've said this before, like if players get pissed off and they respond in a certain way, and I've been in situations, Ken, I'm sure you have before, you've seen me in situations before where guys get pissed off at me. If a guy gets pissed off at me, then, that's how it goes. My job is to go get answers. And sometimes in the push for getting that answers, people aren't going to be happy. And that's how it goes. And I understand that. I get it. So I really don't have an overly huge problem with the way Draisaitl handles himself. I just think in this situation, Draisaitl fired the first arrow and Matty went back at him. So people saying that like Matty went out to try and antagonize this guy, these are two grown men who have a job to do and are digging in and doing their jobs. I have no problem with it. And I did want to make the point that you were talking about. You don't have a problem with the question because there's people in here who are disagreeing with the both of us and saying that, it's a bad question. This is a guy who's sick of not getting answers or someone ducking a question. And he's saying, name one thing. Like, you're losing. You've lost how many games out of your last 14 games? Name one thing you can do better. To me, this is a guy who's exasperated with someone not answering questions and saying, answer a question. Let me make it as easy on you as possible. Name one thing that you guys could do better to get out of this. You wear an A. You have a Hart trophy sitting in your trophy case at home. You should probably be able to come up with one idea of something that this team could do better to turn this around. So to me, I get why people think that it's a bad or a lazy question. I don't think it is. I think it's a question where he's saying, I'm going to make this easy for you. I'm going to put the ball up on the tee. Just swing the bat. Come out and swing the bat. That's all he's asking. So anyways, we've spent a lot of time on this. And I know that every time we don't talk Jets, there's some people in here that just start pulling their hair out because on both, TSN and on Sportsnet, there's plenty of talk about other teams and people come here to talk Jets. So we should close this out. I'm going to ask you this. We've talked a little bit about the line, but and we've talked in the past about Kyle Connor not getting his due. How clearly is Kyle Connor the best player on the Winnipeg Jets right now? Let me ask it like that.
Yeah, Kyle had a great start to the game, no doubt about that. He's involved. Again, people think that this is just some prayer play, like Stanley banking it off the boards. He sees there's an ability to exit, and Kyle Connor makes a really smart play where a player closes on him, and he gets the puck to Dubois in order to create the 2-on-1 rush. And there too, on the power play goal, is there an element of luck involved when the puck bounces off the end boards? Yes, but you have to be able and willing to get to the puck. And I encourage people to go back and look at the replay. Look where Kyle Connor puts this puck, right? Look where he buries it bar down, basically. To me, just exceptional job. I would also say, too, I think this is one of another great game for Pierre-Luc Dubois. Had been a little bit quiet lately, only a goal in his last 6 games, 1 goal, 1 point. But he was back in that kind of under your skin kind of mentality, kind of using his physical strengths and getting very involved. And again, too, like we've seen this throughout the course of the year. Like we saw it when Paul Stastny said, I want Nikolai Ehlers to score the goal that I get my 500th assist on. You saw Pierre-Luc Dubois today say, you know what? I told Cole that I owed him one. Remember? Like he thought, Pierre-Luc Dubois felt badly that he couldn't convert the smart play that Dubois made on Thursday against the Detroit Red Wings. So what does he do? He goes out and gets him, puts it on a tee for him to bury his first NHL goal. I think there's like that genuine caring about your teammates. I think that's been very much on display here. And too, both those guys have been playing great. I think that, obviously Connor is getting his due as an all-star. I think that Dubois has had a really strong start to his season as well. And those two guys together have forged an incredible bond in terms of their on-ice performance. And that whole deal of the speed element and the power and the speed element, but Dubois can also get around too and skate, and he gets to the net and he can shoot. So to me, I like the way that those two guys are playing together. And yeah, I mean, Kyle Connor is driving a lot of play. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. All right, we're going to close this out. And I'm going to close out with a little bit of a teaser. One, let's start off with the next time you see us will be for our long form show on Thursday. We're going to have Tara Sloan on. Tara is really, really interesting case because the first time I ever heard of her was back in the 90s I was a big Canadian music scene guy. There's, Alan Cross, who's another Winnipegger, who does what's it called, the ongoing history of new music. He has a podcast. He did a really, really, really good podcast on the 90s Canadian scene that kind of blew up with bands like Moist and Tea Party and Conline Crush and all bands like that. And she was with Joy Drop back in those days. And that's the first I remember hearing of her, and then has popped up in some movies, and now clearly is, works alongside Ron with our hometown hockey, and is definitely someone who is not afraid to go to battle with people on the internet. She seems to be in the middle of it all the time. She's going to be an interesting person to talk to. So we want to get into that before we get into the next game, which is going to be the Nashville Predators and the Winnipeg Jets. Really interesting stretch. You've touched on it here, Ken. A really interesting stretch the next little while here for the Winnipeg Jets. And then the last thing I just want to say, Ken and I had a meeting with the people in Toronto, and Jade Buckley, who is, no one's going to know who Jade is, but we do. And we know that, man, oh man, is she ever phenomenal and is all over this, is super keen, and presented us a whole bunch of different merch options that we're going to be unveiling and rolling out over the next month, less than a month for a lot of this stuff in the coming weeks. I know people had asked earlier about when the shirts are coming. I don't have an answer to that question, but
They're out. They've been sent.
They've been sent. Yeah.
It's just, we think it's more of the delivery issue right now, I think.
Exactly. So the shirts are coming, and I know that we talked about. So let's just say this right off the bat. The launch and the amount of people who jumped on the Kenny and Renny shirts that we had out there allowed us to bring the price of the t-shirts down, but not for the ones that have been sold already. But the ones that have been sold, everyone is going to get a discount for further merch that is coming out, and we're going to try and make sure that we get you stuff that's worth you investing in. So once again, thank you so much for everyone who helped us launch. It was absolutely phenomenal. Go to Sportsnet shop if you are still interested in that. But if you're getting those shirts and if you've purchased, make sure you wait for your discount before you buy more, because you're going to be able to get it for cheaper. And that's about it. I want to close this show out here. Thank you so much. It was a heated chat room, especially when we started talking about the Maddie stuff. We respect everybody's opinions out there, and we respect your time and you putting up with us here. Thank you so much for that. We're looking forward to seeing you next time. We will see you, hopefully as many of you as possible, on Thursday at 3:00 as we do our long form Kenny and Renny with Tara Sloan. Thanks for joining us, everyone.